We are now going to see a film on our next speaker, Professor G. Raghuram.
Professor G. Raghuram is currently serving as the director of the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and was a professor and chairperson of the Public Systems Group at IIM Ahmedabad. He has also served as the Vice Chancellor of the Indian Maritime University and specializes in infrastructure and transport systems and logistics and supply chain management. He has a PhD from Northwestern University, USA, a postgraduate diploma in management from IIM Ahmedabad, and a BTech degree from IIT Madras. He is a member of the Global Future Council on Mobility of the World Economic Forum and Executive Council of the National Aviation University. He is also a fellow of the Operational Research Society of India and Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. He was awarded the M.C. Puri Memorial Award for his contribution to the operational research in India 2016 and the Academician of the Year Award by the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport in 2012 for his outstanding contribution to the field. We are honored to welcome Professor G. Raghuram.
Professor G. Raghuram, Director, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore.
Dr. Karad and dignitaries on the dais, and all of you, teachers. It's really an honor for me to be in this kind of a function, probably my first. And well, let me see what value can be added. Yeah. The topic is on quality of higher education. Truth and Reconciliation. I thought very interesting title. So I thought I am going to focus a little bit on the truth of quality of higher education, that in the Indian context, and then let us see how we can reconcile. Next. So broadly, I'd like to address what are the needs of the future and where are we and what do we need to do. Next. Well, as was, I must first of all thank the organizers for making that little video of me. I've never attempted anything like that, and I think that's a good one for me to take away. Yeah. So, well, since I was part of the World Economic Forum in one of their councils, I've been following some of the interesting research and sort of looking at the future kind of issues that they put out and what they really say for the 21st century skill requirements. So first of all, an important thing we must recognize is, given the digitalization in the world, 65% of today's school-going children will be doing jobs that do not exist as on date. So that immediately tells us in what way we need to prepare them so that their adaptability goes up. They have categorized the skills into three. They say foundation literacies, competencies, and character qualities. Next. So, what is foundation literacies? Well, how students apply core skills to everyday tasks. Competencies, how students approach complex challenges. And character qualities, how students approach the changing environment. Next. Well, they've made these 3 blocks. I'll just highlight a few. So, for example, under foundation literacies, we talk about, well, literacy, numeracy, ICT literacy, ability to work on the computer, scientific literacy, ability to understand the scientific process, financial literacy, and cultural and civic literacy. I think these are essentials. And whether it is at school level or higher education level, these need to be continuously reinforced. Okay, then we talk about competencies. Well, creativity is one, communication, collaboration. Then when we move on to character, issues like curiosity, initiative, persistence and grit, acceptability, leadership. So these are the kind of attributes that we somehow need to build in. They have further, of course, crystallized it, and they have identified specific skills. Next. In 2015, I mean, this is like a 5-year focus. In 2015, the number 1 was complex problem solving. In fact, more than the Western world, I think India represents the kind of complexity, because you take any issue, immediately it becomes complex. First of all, scale becomes huge, multiple perspectives. I mean, you want to just take a simple problem which everybody understands, Swachh Bharat, or, that we must work towards a society where we do not defecate in the open. Half the population still, thinks that's an okay way to do it. Public health costs are very significant. So, it's a complex problem-solving issue. And I think it's people, MBAs, policy level, with a deep understanding of the grassroots issues, have to start applying their mind on that. Interestingly, 2015 and 20 complex problem solving is the top of the kind of skills we need to get our students to have. Some of the skills in 15, like coordinating with others and, well, even quality control, negotiation. So in fact, quality control has moved out of the top 10. Negotiation has come down. But the new thing that's come up from 15 to 20 is creativity. So in fact, the top 3 for 2020 would be complex problem solving, critical thinking, continuous questioning, assessing what is going on, how to improve, and creativity, being able to approach a problem from multiple dimensions and, come up with maybe a solution that has not been thought of. Next. So given that, what should be the attributes of higher educational institutions of the future? In fact, I was part of a group of 50 higher educational, heads of institutions who met in Singapore as part of EU, there was a EU-sponsored event, to characterize what would be the university of the future, especially in the digital era. What was interesting is, everybody said we must go back to basics. Digitalization is something that's happening out there, and changes are always happening. In fact, today people talk about VUCA world. In fact, we came away saying, look, VUCA is not something that you have to suddenly worry about. VUCA is where, there's an uncertain world, volatile world. At different points of time, world has been VUCA. And world will continue to be VUCA when, other kinds of changes come in. Can you imagine when independence of India came in, if there were businesses run by, let us say, Hindu people in Pakistan or Islamic people in India, it would have been a VUCA world for them. You know, where should I be? What should I do? How will my business survive? In fact, they were even concerned about their lives in some sense. So, Second World War, it's often said that in some parts of Europe, people wouldn't know when they wake up in the morning which country they belong to. So, VUCA world is all the time. What we need is an ability to comprehend it, keep our antennae up, and not necessarily panic, but be able to respond to it. So the basic attributes that came out were, number one, a higher educational institution must be fundamentally multidisciplinary. Number two, we must provide for lifelong learning. And number three, quality education, there must be access to a larger number rather than a university trying to filter out people and say that, you know, it's only meant for an exclusive group. And I think these are the changes that we need to worry about in how universities of the future need to be if they have to make a desirable social impact. In a sense, and maybe I am biased, management education may be relatively, compared to other disciplines, is a little more on these dimensions. Though, when I look at how even an institution like IIMB is organized, you know, multidisciplinarity is an issue. Management brings in economics, it brings in social sciences, brings in quantitative abilities, and yes, it tries to create a person who can manage economic activities, social activities in a better way. But even within that, once somebody is put in finance or somebody is put in marketing, they don't necessarily want to talk to one another, though real problems come that cut across all of this. So achieving multidisciplinarity is an issue. And for the leadership of institutions, that's something they need to continuously think about. Lifelong learning, of course, in a management school, we have the concept of executive education. People come back at different stages of their life. Inclusive access to quality education. In fact, IIMs must be accused of the fact that creating this whole thing about CAT and interviews and, you know, 99 percentile and whatever, in a sense, it is an exclusive institution. Now, there is a debate whether you want to focus on, is there value in focusing on these high quality products? In a way, I applaud the government in having imposed reservation on us, because it is really heartwarming to see the 50% who come through the reserved route and therefore not necessarily with that high level of you know, CAT percentile or whatever, but still they go through that education, and simply the induction effect of, let us say, 50% who come through, in a sense, higher quality at the entry level, but by the time the 2 years are over, there's a lot of homogenization. And I really, you know, feel very good about the fact that one is able to add a lot more value to the other 50%, as it were. So, inclusive access. Now, the other thing that institution like IIM Bangalore is doing is going very strongly in MOOCs, massive open online courses. There are about 30 courses available now. They are available on 3 platforms. One is edX, which is the global platform created by Harvard and MIT. Like Coursera, you know, there is edX. Then we ourselves have created a brand called IIMBX. And third, the government's own platform called Swayam. So these courses are available on these platforms, and anybody at an individual level can do it. It is for free, except, of course, if you want a certificate, then there is a payment, because at some level we have to have a revenue model. But the other way we are trying to look at a revenue model is to have or make this available on a business-to-business model, you know, like with academic institutions, and see how the MOOCs can be blended into their learning. So that's one I would say, small effort being taken by at least IIM Bangalore in reaching out management education or quality management education to a wider audience. Next. Well, where are we? Next. So the gross enrollment ratio was already talked about. In India, I mean, you must see, of course, from a quantity perspective, in the last decade, we have really stepped up. Thanks to the large number of higher educational institutions, private universities that have come in, from what may have been around 10% in the early 2000s, we are now at 27%. But if we look at the world average, next, it's 35%. We are less than the world average, not something to be proud of. Next. If we compare with United States, in fact, US had crossed 90%, and now it's on the decline. It's now somewhere around 80%. China, which was lower than India, has crossed India and has gone to 40%. Of course, one can debate whether everybody needs to go through higher education. Higher education meaning college, undergraduation and post-graduation. But I guess if you want to build a society and want to create some of those complex problem solving and creativity, those kind of skills, at some level we need to be able to go into higher education. And I would believe that India still needs to up its gross enrollment ratio. Of course, the problem in India today is, next, as per the focus of this session, you can see how the higher educational institutions have really ramped up. And we have that 40,000 or so is the number of independent colleges, and the 800 or nearly 900 now is the number of universities. Quantity has gone up. There is an issue of quality. Next. If you see, of course, the expenditure on higher education as a percentage of GDP, we are still at about 1.3%, which is fairly steady. Maybe a marginal increase, of course, in the expenditure as percentage of GDP. The absolute figure going up. We need to think about how to increase this. Just to take a stock of how we perform with respect to global rankings. Sorry, yeah, I just missed a slide here. In fact, one consequence of this and the way governmental involvement is there in higher education, if you see today, 15 out of 18 IITs don't have a director. 4 out of 20 IIMs don't have a full-time director. They have a concept of a director in charge. 12 out of 31 NITs, 4 out of 47 central universities. Now, you get into the state-level universities, I don't know. I'm sure we can look at what the data is. Earlier, it was mentioned that I was the Vice Chancellor of the Indian Maritime University, and I must say I went there with a lot of passion because my work is in logistics, transportation, and I have done, I've been doing work in maritime. But the 8-9 months that I was there, the very same central government that actually said it will be great to have a person like you, but I think their ability to understand what it means to give autonomy to a higher educational institution, there was a difficulty in connecting. And at some point, I thought that this is not the kind of battle I want to be dealing with, and decided to go back to IIM Ahmedabad. Of course, subsequently, I got this opportunity to come to IIM Bangalore. Next. Yeah, just looking at some rankings. So, interestingly, there are 2 global rankings. Both are British-driven, but one of them kind of looks at it in a way that US institutions come on top. So, here is one where top 10 universities, well, MIT, Stanford, Harvard, most of the top are US, then Cambridge and Oxford comes in. Basically, US, UK. India, the higher, as per this, IIT Delhi currently is on the top, 172, and you can go down. Mostly they are IITs. Of course, IISc is there. And then Delhi University comes in, Jadavpur University comes in. And that is when you go to like 600. Next. In the Times Higher Education, of course, the top universities are UK-based. They are far more looking at, in a specialized way. And you can see, therefore, Oxford, Cambridge, and also a little more emphasis on arts or something very exclusive. And that is why California Institute of Technology comes up there. In that, IISc is number 1 from India, but it's still in the 200 so range. Next. Well, in the management programs, we seem to have done better. IIMB, as per QS rankings, was most recently number 22, IIMA 23, IMC 46 for the 2-year program. And for the 1-year program, 49, 58, 93. My time's up? Yeah. Okay. So, next. I guess we can skip. A few thoughts on what do we need to do. Next. Well, recently a book came out by one of the ex-directors of IIM Bangalore, Professor Pankaj Chandra, called Building Universities That Matter. Where are Indian institutions going wrong? So 4 reasons he points out. One is regulation and bureaucratic control. Second, low investments. Third, poor quality of teachers and teaching. And fourth, well, corruption, nepotism, student violence, students not being aligned with the purpose of the university. Next. Some of the diagnoses, again, you can see, for example, the very spread of coaching institutions obviously is an indication that core education is not quite there. Quality, lack of job readiness, lack of capacity utilization. It's interesting. Even in the US, enrollment in capacity is going down. So also in India. We have reached 27% gross enrollment ratio, but we seem to have reached a situation of overcapacity, especially in engineering and management. Next. Well, there are many government initiatives. I would really laud the government again for the new IIM bill, where at least they are saying, I will move away from the IIMs and let them be autonomous and function on their own, which I think is a wonderful move. The bill just got presidential assent on 31st December. MOOCs and Swayam, which they are propagating. The Rashtriya Uchatar Shiksha Abhiyan, NAC and NBA, and of course restructuring of the UGC, which is being talked about. Next. So, things to do. We have to view research and teaching as 2 sides of the same coin. And I find that many of our higher educational institutions focus more on teaching. See, unless we create the urge to know, to learn, to think about new concepts and create new concepts, the teaching quality would not go up continuously. Of course, I think I would leave the thought to all of you as teachers, what can we do on our own? And of course, to academic administrators, is teaching just a noble profession? Yes, indeed it is. But it should have appropriate Guru Dakshina. And I think in many institutions, teachers do not get the right kind of salaries that will incentivize quality people to come in and continue to deliver quality. Well, let me just end on the note, since there is Sanskrit here. Vidvatvancha nripatvancha naivatulyam kadachana swadeshe pujyate raja vidwan sarvatra pujyate. And let us all aspire for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your thoughts.